So for the roof, I traced around, I held this upside down on the mat board, traced around it, cut wider, and then went the width of foam core inside so I know where to glue the stops, and that's another handy thing for these offcuts. So that will keep it in place when you lay it on there, and then we'll put the finish on the roof and it'll look fantastic. For the siding, I took some of this corrugated paper that I got off of the Amazons and very carefully cut it to fit, and you can see some of the detail, the wood coming through. Any place it doesn't cover, you can easily lay a strip of wood on or just paint as a shadow. That's the advantage of the black foam core, is it kind of lends itself to that automatically. I also make corrugated iron out of the cardboard from drink boxes, and I'll have another video showing how I do that, but I use these kind of interchangeably, sort of mix it up so it gives it an extra scrappy appearance. But you can do it all with one or the other, make it all neat, and some of mine are done with all just the stuff that I made because I didn't have this yet. They all look good. It's all scrappy, so it's good to go. I'm just going to glue that on with some PVA. I'll just put a little bit down here. And pay extra close attention to anywhere there's an edge because you don't want that coming up. You don't want to soak it with PVA, but you want to make sure there's a good bond there and not a lot of room for it to separate from the piece. And we just put that on there and wiggle it a little bit, kind of smear it around. And we'll do the same for the rest of the sides. Back in a moment. So all the siding has been added. Do some parts where they overlap, some patches, that sort of thing, just to add a little bit of visual appeal. And we did our roof the same way. So once that dries pretty well, then we'll get ready to do the base, and we'll start painting. So all the siding is on, roof is done. It's on there. I took the offcut of the foam core where I had cut out the door, trimmed it down a little so it fit back in the frame, glued some more corrugated to it, and cut a piece of matchstick for a handle, and made a front door. So now we're going to do some of the basing and try to get that ready for painting. And I have a cat moving into my space. Alright, well, now that my feline visitor has had her little excitement, maybe, we'll start getting this ready. And I just put a little coat of PVA on here. Sometimes I use a brush, sometimes I just smear it with a piece of off-cut foam core or scrap of wood or whatever I happen to have laying around. You just want to have a, doesn't have to be a heavy coat, but a good coat of PVA on there just gives something to, we're going to use some sand and give that something to stick to. And this is a pretty forgiving process. I mean, if you get to the end of it after you've glued the sand and painted and figure out there's a bare spot, and you very easily go back and either fill it in with some more sand, or you can glue some tufts on it, or static grass, or some kind of wreckage, or whatever. And the mix I'm using is just some sand that I actually got at a construction site a number of years ago. It was intended for use with concrete. So it's a good mix of very small and kind of larger pieces. Gives it a good chunky, rough appearance. And I mean, that's basically it. So we'll let that dry and we'll get that ready to paint. While the sand is drying is a good time to, if you want to add in any little details. I very carefully peeled the paper back from the back of the corrugated paper. That flat back piece, I just peeled it off, put a little PVA on there, and then you can kind of add that as a patch. And especially when you paint it, you can paint that a contrasting color so it stands out, or paint it rustier or not as rusty as the rest of the pieces. But I just very carefully take a knife and just start separating that, and you can kind of peel it away. And you'll get a little bit of this backing paper, which do the same thing. And then just kind of go around it with a little bit of PVA. Find a spot to stick it on. Make sure that you leave it in camera range so anyone can see it. And we'll just add that right there. So that's a spot where maybe it rusted through, or super mutant threw somebody's skull through it. Who knows? You know, there's no telling, but gives it an extra scrappy look. So be sure to add those kind of details, just, you know, to taste. And this ought to be dry enough for painting momentarily.